As I said in my last video, I've been a fan of the Bond franchise since I was a kid, and as important as the beginning of a movie is, the ending can make or break a movie. It's what we are left with, the last thing we remember after seeing a movie. I mean, you've got to go out with a bang and not crash and burn like the ending to an M. Night Shyamalan movie. And of the many Bond movies, these ones prove that even in an action movie, the conclusion can be just as entertaining and interesting as the explosions and espionage. So here are the top 5 Bond endings, starting with number 5, License to Kill. The best of the two Timothy Dalton movies. Living Daylights may have had the better opening, but License to Kill has the better ending. At the end of License to Kill, Bond faces off against Sanchez, one of the most underrated Bond villains. They fight on the back of a tanker truck until it goes off the road. Bond gets up and is about to be hit with a machete. That's when Sanchez sees Felix's lighter, good pun by the way, which I think was given to Bond the last time we saw Felix, with his legs. Right before Bond sets him on fire as Sanchez is covered in cocaine mixed gasoline. It's almost poetic. It's a great revenge tale and possibly Bond's most brutal outing. Bond had to, up the ante from Felix's shark attack. Bond was like, if you're going to feed my friend's legs to a shark, then I'm going to have to set you on fire. It then cuts to the party where Pam sees Bond chatting with Lupe. These are the two Bond girls. Yes, there are two in this movie. She goes to the pool to escape the party. Bond notices her leave and jumps off the balcony into the pool, finally making his choice between the two women. They kiss and then the song plays If You'd Asked Me To as the credits roll. Which makes me wonder if they had two Bond themes that they wanted to use but just played this one at the end instead. Number 4, Skyfall. They did set this one up to be the last mission we see from this Bond, fighting alongside the groundskeeper of his family home right before it is destroyed, which he lived in before he was orphaned, armed with his father's rifle, and the dynamic between M and Bond is almost like mother and son, and Silver is like the abandoned long-lost brother of Bond. So it's framed as sort of a family reunion. The fighting ends with Bond killing Silver, who was attempting to kill M when Bond throws a knife in his back, but he was too late and M bleeds out. And Bond sees the death of basically his maternal figure, his metaphorical mother. It's a sad end, but a great way to send off Judi Dench's character, who's always given a great performance in all of her 7 Bond movies, giving more personality to the character than we had ever seen before. And so Silver is one of the best Bond villains, probably the best of the Craig era. He did what no other Bond villain could, which is killing M. And then we see the movies come full circle as Bond greets Moneypenny, and then he enters the office of the new M, who is a no-nonsense dude with a straightforward attitude, so it's just like the original. And we see even the padded door from the original movies as well. They could have ended the series here and brought it in a new actor, but they still wanted Craig to play the role, and so I don't really have a problem with this, really. Number 3, No Time to Die. Now, this one is a controversial pick. I think it was a ballsy move to kill Bond, but the ending humanizes the character. Killing him in a heroic way still makes it feel like the Bond end. Whereas Skyfall shows the metaphorical death of Bond's family, this movie shows Bond sacrifice himself for his actual family. But when you think about it, it's the only way they could have really ended Craig's Bond. They missed the opportunity with Skyfall, and this was a way better way to do it than with Spectre. Plus, Ian Fleming tried to kill off Bond with the From Russia with Love novel, so it was never really out of the realm of possibilities. Speaking of the books, it was good that they gave him a family, finally, like they did in the book You Only Live Twice. But I think they only had 2 options with this story. He just leaves with his wife and daughter, or he dies. And whether you like it or not, this Bond is the only one that actually had a real arc. So I think his movies needed a conclusion, and we got it. Did you really want Craig's Bond to retire again? Which is pretty funny. In almost all of these movies, Bond retires and then they pull him back in. So if they hadn't gone this route and were going to just have him go back to work, because that's not really an arc. Or are we just going to accept that Craig just retires for like the fourth time? That's not really a conclusion either. No, he's dead, he's gone, and apparently that was the plan from the start. Craig had the deal with the producers to allow him to kill off his Bond, and they agreed to it. So this ending is the most different, as it's never been done before. When you live by the sword, you die by the sword, or in this case, you try to stop World War III, you get blown up with a missile strike. Number 2, Casino Royale. Casino Royale is a top 3 Bond movie which has a great ending. Vesper, Bond's girl, drowns after Bond tries to save her. This is not the first time Bond had an emotional moment after the death of a loved one, but it's the first time he cried, and he tries to blow it off as if it didn't affect him. But Bond finds out who had her killed, Mr. White, and he is shot in the leg and crawls across the ground as he looks up at Bond in a suit with one hand in his pocket and the other holding a submachine gun. This is right before he says the famous line, "The name's Bond, James Bond." This is the real introduction to the character. Everything before this was just prequel. But this is supposed to be prime Bond, so I think it makes sense what they did with Quantum of Solace. It adds to this arc, but the problem is that they introduced us to Bond at the end, so you would think a more traditional Bond would have followed. Not that that's a problem necessarily. I think doing something new is great, but maybe they weren't sure where this Bond was going. I don't think that affects this ending though, it's still great. And number 1, On Her Majesty's Secret Service. Probably the most underrated Bond movie. Another top 3 movie, making George Lazenby technically the most consistent Bond, having only one movie, and it was great. The ending influenced basically all the Daniel Craig movies, really all the movies on this list, who have the emotional scenes, most notably Casino Royale and No Time to Die, which even references the line that Lazenby says at the end. So the way that they did those movies is not out of place for the series to do that, because this movie exists. The difference in this ending though is that there's some hope found in those other movies, but none can be found here. We see Bond getting married and driving off into the sunset until they stop and Bond takes the flowers off his car. But Blofeld and his henchwoman Irma Bunt do a drive-by shooting. Bond is about to chase them, but then notices that his wife Tracy has been shot in the head. A police officer shows up and Bond tells him that she is just resting, and that there's no rush, we have all the time in the world, while cradling her dead body in his arms. He rests his head against hers, and then the credits roll with a still shot of the windscreen with a bullet hole in it. I just wish they'd allowed Lazenby to cry like he originally did, but they thought it wasn't masculine enough to do so. Which I think doesn't ruin the ending, knowing that, it's still a great ending and my favorite. So there you go, some controversial picks, but this is my list, so if you disagree then you're wrong, and your punishment is to like and subscribe.
There's no hurry, you see. We have all the time in the world.